Peter, if you want to,
Well,
just
we want to let John
it doesn't matter.
convene us officially?
Whoever-
Well, we've got, let me just see, 6 people on the Zoom call: Nick Everett, Rich Flood, Peter Schlachtis, Martha Monserrat, and Greg Rivera of the Village of Rybrook.
Welcome to August meetings.
So the question which Martha, we had a report that Greenwich expects to approve the resolution in mid-September, and that would be the last municipality in our group to approve it. So that was good news.
I hadn't heard about Portchester. That's a done deal?
Yeah, believe so.
Great. Did a copy of the Portchester resolution get circulated?
Yes. So I don't know if I did that one individually, but when I sent it was part of the PDF that I sent, well, the letter that I sent over to Latimer, but it's included in there. And I sent out the Newcastle one because the assistant to Mike Cloven over Newcastle gave that one to me. So the only one we're waiting on now is Greenwich.
All right. No, that's good progress. I mean, we were under a tight timeline trying to do it in the summer. So I think that's really a good performance by the various municipalities.
Yeah, keep in mind our goal was September 1st, so I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah. Well, well, at least 6 of them made September 1st. Yeah,
Pretty
Greenwich
good.
is targeting September 16th, I think.
Okay.
The other question I had is, while we're on all this, I guess, did you, Nick, in Rye, did you present to the Rye officials just the resolution, or did you also present the briefing paper that Martha and others had authored?
They had copies of both. There was a little bit of discussion about both. But as I said last time, the major discussion was it binding, which the answer is really no, it's not binding. And the concept about the TUAs expiring at the same time.
Right.
Has been discussed by various people. Those are really the only 2 issues that came up.
Yeah. In Rybrook, I was at the trustee meeting, but so was Chris Bradbury, who had read Martha's report as well. So I gave a brief summary of it, and trustees just went ahead, and I think they'd been briefed by Chris. So there weren't too many questions, as I recall. Richard, did you know if the briefing paper was used in the Greenwich discussions?
John was the one that presented to the Board of Selectmen. I can ask him and get back to you on that. I'm not positive.
Okay, because we want to understand a little bit how these briefing papers are being used. And so I'll get out to the other people on the committee and ask them, since they're not on the call, how it was, because that might affect how we write them, the tailoring, the length may just have some impact. I don't know. The length I thought of the TUA paper was fine. I think that worked very well.
Well, actually, that raises a point I'd like to start the discussion with, which is really, let's go back to kind of basics. I mean, we're going to put together some sort of report. Well, who is it addressed to? Who's the audience it's going to? And how is that, what is the approval process? Is the approval process going to have to go through each of the communities again? Or is it just going directly through this committee and then to the county? And then finally, what is the follow-up?
Yeah, well,
once it's submitted, what's our follow-up? What's our position?
The answer to the question of who it goes to is basically county executive, deputy county executive, and I think it's 4 or 5 county legislators who are in this area, who are responsible for this area. And what happened here, Rybrook bundled the ones as they came in and sent them on as a bundle. Second question you had, and we can continue to do that, I take it, Greg. You know, don't have a problem with that, or we could have some other community do it for a while. The other issue is, oh gosh, I had it, now I'm losing it. What was your second question?
How does it get approved? Do we have
How
to
does
go
it get
back
approved?
through each municipal, each
Well,
community's governing body, or is it just
yeah, that
by
is
this
my
committee?
view. That is my view, because that's what gives the whole process political strength.
Yes, and
Because they're acting in a united way, so we have everybody approve. People can change the wording a little bit if they want. I don't think that's a big deal. But getting the principle down, and that's why we got to keep these resolutions focused, right? Get the principle down and then have all 7 municipalities saying, this is what we think. I think that's more powerful than sending them in individually.
Okay, then in that case, when we look at Martha's paper, let's not get hung up on the backup. Let's focus, and this is going to go through with everyone. We have to focus on the recommendations.
Right. Well,
Because if we have to go through all these political bodies, they've got to be clear, simple, and straightforward.
Right, I agree.
John, may I?
Well, just let me say one thing. The only thing that went to Latimer and the others was the approved resolutions,
yes.
not the backup paper. That's kind of what I think should happen in the future.
Yeah, I'm just gonna just jump in for a second to mention. So again, I sent to the group exactly what it is that I sent Latimer, Joe McDonald, who's the director of operations, Ken Jenkins, and then also April, as well as the legislators who represents the
We added people. Okay.
but basically it is all the 5 resolutions I had at the time, as well as a cover letter signed by our mayor, Jason Klein. But it kind of briefly describes as well in the letter, basically what like the recommendations were in a very short summary. So that's what they have.
Yeah, okay. But see,
Well, yeah, but just be careful, because when you put a cover letter like that on, that's all that ever gets read by 90% of the people.
Yeah.
Gets sent to.
But in the email that I sent though as well, and the letter, it very specifically, and we did that by design, very specifically states in terms of with what the resolutions are backing up exactly what, because again, as what John was saying before, in terms of you going through all the municipal bodies, and again, we wanted to make sure we were very clear on that, both in my email as well as the letter.
Okay, but let's look at this list that John sent out today. We have 7 groups here, 9 groups, well, 8 groups. And each one, let's say, has 4 or 5 recommendations. That's taking us up to upwards of 40 recommendations. You can't cover that in a cover letter. And you need
talking
to.
about the TUA. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different.
No, I know. I'm
process.
looking forward to this next.
No, I understand. But I was just I'm explaining just what they have already.
No, that's fine. But we need to focus. We need to be really clear and simple and focused. Otherwise, it's all a waste of effort. We can't get bogged down in 5, 6 pages for each one of those line items. It's got to be 1 page each.
That becomes it's easy, you know, I mean, the product I think is better that way, but it's hard to do with these topics because we're bringing up some new issues that are not supported by past documentation or past studies.
But Martha, the backup is fine. It's fine to have that backup.
So we'll put that as an appendix perhaps and have the recommendations just be
But think about going to these
20 bulleted items, right?
Think about going to these town boards. And if you're a guy who gets a package of 120 pages for every meeting,
No.
you're not going to get into the detail. You're going to look at what are the recommendations.
Right. So this air study has 8. So if you, like to your point, you're going to have maybe 40, right? Or something altogether. Is that the document? Is that the end product that we're trying to produce?
No,
A list of 40 recommendations.
Wait a second, because I'm thinking, but the other alternative here, Nick, is that let's say we do air quality, and sometime in, let's say, September, Martha, the team creates a resolution, just as they did on the TUA. And we send that resolution to all the municipalities. So that we're not going to, I don't know that we're going to bundle all the remaining issues in one mailing to the elected officials. I think it's going to be separate ones to kind of keep the point in front of them, as it were.
That would not be my recommendation.
What do you see as the weakness, Nick?
Structurally, I just think it's much bigger, better blow if you say, this committee has put forward this amount of work. Here are the recommendations per topic, and there's the backup. And put it all together.
But then you don't get, how do you get the municipalities to say they endorse the work?
That's going to be a problem. I agree, but
Yeah.
that's
Because
that's
I
a
think
problem no
that's
matter what.
critical. That's-
Peter has been thumbs up here.
So I agree with everything that's been said, and I've been thinking about it, and I think that we've inadvertently had mission creep, for which I will take. That's not in the end going to be a good thing for us. I think, or mission bloat. I think, and I will take some or much of the blame here. By starting on the terminal use regulation, which was a relatively very finite, defined, concrete topic.
Right.
And it was something that, in particular, I had given a lot of thought to. Martha gave it a lot of thought, and it came together. It sort of lent itself to a briefing paper to educate, because we needed to, we needed to make sure that all the village boards or municipal boards were, felt able to act on this quickly. So we had to make sure that they were educated, and then we were able to make fairly discrete, concrete, even detailed recommendations without creating a big mess of a work product that would be difficult to expect municipal boards to digest and evaluate and sign on to. Now we're shifting to a much different kind of project, but we're using the same methodology. And as a result, I think we're heading down a road that's not going to produce a workable result. We're potentially going to be spending uh, a lot of extra effort. Certainly, I mean, again, I need to reiterate multiple times here that everything that you've done, Martha, has been fantastic, and there's ways to use all of it. But I don't know how realistic it is if that's, I'm sure you weren't intending to create a bar for other groups per se, but it's sort of inevitable a little bit that becomes the bar. And, we can't, I don't think we can expect our group. We're a political group. We're here to express and consolidate concerns and aspirations of our communities, not to be a substitute for the county's technical expertise. Okay. And to the extent, even with the TUR, even with the TUA, we got some pushback from the airport that we were making, certain suggestions without full consultation with the experts, and therefore weren't necessarily taking into account this, that, and the other thing, legal, technical, what have you. If I don't think, I think we're setting ourselves up to lose if we try to advocate on that playing field. Nobody can fault us for being concerned about our health, about the environment, about about both local and global environmental impacts relating to aviation. Nobody can be concerned about us worrying about our drinking water, or our well-being with respect to various airport impacts. But it's not our job to, and it's not our job to come up with specific solutions in all the technical areas.
No, well, we couldn't, Peter. I think that's, I don't think anybody here thinks we could, right?
Right. And so I don't think we should be aiming for a 40 recommendation, 8 on air quality and 8 on water and 8 on, 4 on this and 6 on that. I think that there's, this is still, as far as I can see, early stages with respect to what will ultimately become the new master plan. Okay? There's going to be certain aspects, drafts of aspects of the master plan released. There's going to be drafts released that we'll be able to dig into. Right now, if we want to get out ahead of this, I think we'd be well advised and we'll be able to move more quickly if we try to simply identify things that we want to make sure get addressed, and perhaps evaluate a little bit whether we think where we think things were not adequately addressed in the old plan. So if air pollution, just to take the example du jour, if air pollution is important to us, okay, and we want to know more about it, and we want the airport master plan to reflect a greater concern for it, then at some level, I think that's all we really need to say, other than perhaps pointing out the dearth of content about air pollution that we may feel is in the existing master plan. Which is not to say that we shouldn't educate ourselves. We are much better off knowing what we know, that in terms of everything that Martha put together, and being able to back up our concerns to whatever extent is needed if we're challenged. But remember, the decision makers here are the county government. County government is pretty darn responsive to local concerns. And if we all come together and say, we really think that the airport master plan needs to do more on air pollution, and we flesh it out with a couple of paragraphs or a couple of bullet points of examples, and stop there, let the county then figure out, or come to us with some proposals or solutions or what have you, and let us evaluate them instead of giving them a chance to nitpick us. And I think it'll make our job easier.
Okay, so Peter, let's just
I'll stop there.
You're basically hitting on my third question, which was, what is our involvement in the follow-up once the master plan actually process starts? Are we going to have an involvement? And then to follow your logic, yes, we would, because we would be pressing home the points that we make and making sure they get addressed.
Yeah, because there's going to be a public input process. I really do believe that there's a sincere commitment to that. I guess, it's politics, so anything can happen. And George, will likely be stepping out of the executive director role. But I still think that, if there's not, then our role as a task force changes, I think, very abruptly to being advocates for a robust public input process. But at this point, the county's outlined that kind of process and a multi-stage process to boot, with iterative comments after various drafts or pieces of the of the of the adjusted master plan are released. So I think, again, at this point, we want to make sure that our concerns are not neglected, as opposed to trying to uh, you know write the thing for them.
I guess my only comment on that, Peter, is that I feel it's important in the scoping of the master plan to get out ahead of it, because once it comes out with an outline for public comment, a lot of that is going to, for better for worse, be cast in concrete. They're not going to go back and expand the master plan considerably, in my opinion, just based on public input at that point. I think, up front, we need to say, look, past master plans have not addressed this issue that we now know based on advancements in the science, right? Research that's been published, that this is an area of concern for airports generally, and we want to make sure it's included in the scope.
Is this going to be a typical CEQA process? Greg?
In terms of the master plan overall.
Well, does the county have to come out with a scoping outline that gets put out to public comment, and then if once it's agreed upon,
it will have public comment with various everything in terms of it.
well,
That has to go
if it
through-
is, then we get to comment on the scoping outline before the scope actually gets developed. And the scope
There's
Yeah.
no secret.
Yeah, but say
There's no seeker requirement, but if
That's what I said, I'm
from
not-
experience, once that outline's prepared by a consultant, right? They will figure out ways to, address or dismiss comments that do or do not fit in their outline. I feel generally those outlines tend to be very solid by the time they're put out to the public.
All
So
right,
again,
the
then to
question-
Peter's point, we need to be driving to make sure that all the things we feel are important get into that outline.
Right, exactly. So I think our suggestion, we shouldn't wait for something to land in our lap and then respond to it. We should get something in their hands in advance.
Sorry,
Yes.
for those of us who aren't in this business, what is the CEQA process?
Secra.
Seeker, State Environmental Quality Review Act,
Okay.
seeker.
Yeah, so, but John, just for very, very briefly, and again, because we don't want to really deviate, but basically the secret process is when you have like major like development projects, is pretty much easy we can describe it. It's the state law, the process you have to go through, and you have to do like environmental, again, reviews. It's called the DEIS process. So it's a whole like process you got to do in terms of all these different types of massive projects. So including, just to give you a brief example, like at the hotel, that has to go through secret, it's state law.
No, no, okay, I'm familiar with the process. I didn't know the acronym.
Yeah, they say it differently. Some say secra, some say seeker. So that just makes it more confusing.
Well, the thing, which I wouldn't want to lose here as a point, I mean, I thought the TUA work, I thought the briefing paper was of a good length, and I actually envisioned it with the target mainly being the people who were addressing their municipalities. So they would be better equipped to answer any questions about the proposed resolution. And I thought the proposed resolution was of the right length. So, and then I think, I don't know if every municipality, as you say, Nick, you distribute it to the RI people. But I think you almost need both so that the people on this committee are comfortable that they understand why the issue is important. So some type of background work, it's going to be different, I think, for every issue. And I think though I do think we have to be really careful about wandering too far into making expert opinion statements. What we have to do, and that's why I went back to the prior master plan, and see what they'd said. What we need to do is basically say, this is important to us, or some statement like that. But it can't be as just neutral as we're all interested in cleaner air. You know, there's got to be some meat to it, I think. I can see I don't have, I'm
Well,
persuaded.
it's not so, and I look, I don't disagree, and I agree with Martha that we shouldn't be reactive. We should be proactive. It's a question of winnowing things down to the most succinct uh, and manageable number of recommendations as we can in the initial round. Um, in the initial round. Um, so, I mean, there are different ways to skin that cat, but we're not going to be, we're going to struggle, I think, if we try to bring um, an unwieldy or overly large uh, group of relatively, concrete or limited in scope recommendations on all kinds of different subject areas, and ask our municipalities to approve that, sign their names to it all at once. But on the other hand, we can't keep going, as Nick said. I don't think it will make sense to keep going back to them, with multiple resolutions on different specific topics, either. But I don't know that we need, again, I don't know that we need to. Um, we can also keep in mind that one of the things we can ask for in a meta sense is we can ask for our municipalities to request that the county meet with members of the task force to go over more specific recommendations, or that our work has, or ideas that our work has, uh, that our work has generated as part of their process.
At what point
And
in the process would you want to do that? I think
Early.
early.
That's right. But do you want to do it before the master plan comes to be?
Yes.
But in which case, I'm not sure that type of a detailed one-on-one or 5-on-1, whatever it is, discussion is going to work. Who are you going to have it with? The consultants?
Yes.
That
And the
would be
whole idea is to be sure our points get into their outline, which then get fleshed out into
And do you think
topics
the
of
county would
conversation.
agree to that?
I think the county's intent when they scoped out their public input process specifically included identifying advocacy groups, or stakeholders, I should say, um, and meeting with those stakeholders.
I mean, this is the whole point. We're trying to create power by putting all these communities together and saying,
Right.
including one from Connecticut. I mean, Greenwich is a little bit of an outlier because it's in a different state, but it's next to the airport, so it's important. And we need to get together and go, boom, this is how the municipalities that are affected feel. And it's strength in numbers, and that's I think the reason the task force got put together.
Right, exactly. I agree with that. That was the objective.
So I think we could fold some of the subpoints, as it were, into a meeting, and or a presentation at a meeting that we would ask our municipalities to advocate for as maybe the final, here's what we think the master plan needs to address, in particular areas that it didn't adequately address, or things it shouldn't have done. And and we have this task force that has additional ideas and suggestions that we'd like you to hear them out in a meeting before you finalize a draft, or whatever the appropriate language would be.
Before you finalize the scope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to go. And we could easily take, for instance, what I wrote and vote on the top 3 items, or how we would group some of these into, say, just 3 items related to air, 3 items related to water, 3 items related to noise, and come up with 10 to 20, which I think is a reasonable length that somebody will read, that will be a door opener, so that county will look at it and say, you've got some valid points. Yes, we agree. It's probably, you know, and it's substantive, it's well documented. There'd be benefit to having you meet with our consultant, and also have those same 20 points be points that the municipalities could get their heads around and back and approve of as part of this process. I think we just have to hit, you know, we have to find the highlight items that are going to get people's attention and are substantive enough that will move the process forward. And like you said, leave some of the less important, you know, maybe they're not less important, but the more nuanced items maybe get left for that meeting we actually have with the consultant, and then we dig deeper into these topics. But you know, we don't want to include items that are so esoteric, right, that that the audience can't get their heads around them in a short period of time.
Right.
Yeah, Martha, I don't disagree
So
with you, but I don't think we need to limit anything to a set number like 3.
no, I'm just saying, in general, like that, just to give you the general size that I'm thinking, you know, as opposed to,
Yeah.
and some of the topics may lend themselves to 5, I don't know, but
Right.
a smaller list, right? I mean, I had how many on this list? 5, I had 8. So if that is cut by half, and or more or less, we can just pick the top ones that are, and make as our priority those that are going to really get attention, that identify serious deficiencies in past master planning documents that we think need to be addressed in the next round, either based on new science, new information that we have, new concerns that we have. I would make that our focus. That would help us prioritize which of those items make the final list.
Yeah. Let's set a target at 20, but let's not
Hey,
be
Well,
Yeah,
absolutely
20
rigid.
total, more or less, right? That would just be a general,
yeah.
you know, something to shoot for.
Why don't we
Greg?
use the air quality briefing that Martha put together as kind of a test case for how we would go about doing this? I mean, the work's done. I think quality work. Why don't we use that as the test case? Because otherwise, I'm a little worried. Well, we'll see. I'm a little worried we're going to get too vague. You know, so I think something like that paper could be a good basis. Not necessarily we have to give them the paper, but that the paper leads to conclusions you can support. And to me, it was really
Martha, do
striking
you want?
that although it was mentioned in the transmittal letter the last time, air quality was one of the things mentioned. It doesn't appear in the body of it to have been that, it doesn't appear to have been much.
Right.
Right. Martha, I'm happy to, you know, be as helpful as I can be in that. You've
Well,
done the yeoman's work, so just let me know how I can help. But Greg, I have a question that could make all of our work on this easier. Um, if what we're trying to do is, number one, identify needs and concerns of importance to our communities. Um, Number two, highlight, um, you know, highlight some key attention grabbing, uh, attention and legitimacy grabbing uh, ideas or proposals, and lastly, sort of tie it back to what the existing master plan or prior master plans have not gotten right. Um, in other words, to show a need to do something differently or better. That last piece is still challenging, if for no other reason than the master plan is such a big document, right? Um, is there? I would think there would be a way to take it and convert it to a format that's where it's searchable. So, we don't have to comb through tables of contents and whatever. I don't think there's an index to it. But again, this day and age, we should be able to take the master plan, convert it to a searchable document, and then be able to search for keywords, like pollution and air and what have you, and hone in on more or traffic or what have you, and hone in much more efficiently on where and how the master plan addresses our concerns, because our concerns are not necessarily, they don't conform to the different chapters of the master plan. The master plan has its own logic, and it may be looking at things like air pollution in bits and pieces as it addresses different aspects of airport operations, as opposed to putting it all together in one chapter on air pollution. So we'd like to be able to find those references and evaluate them without spending undue time. Is any way that the village could help with that, do you think?
Let me just kind of get back to me trying to understand exactly what it is that you're asking me. So basically within the master plan, are you basically asking what's like the easiest way, I guess, to within that master plan kind of find, I guess, the key like points or key like topics that
No,
things that are
I want to be
relevant.
able to I want to be able to search for any and all references of different issues wherever they may be found in the master plan
Yeah.
by creating a searchable version of it.
You need to convert the master plan into a Word document that can be searchable.
But say this is more of a honestly, it's more of a tech question than anything.
Yes, it is.
So I don't know if I can really give you a good answer, but as Nick said, I was just thinking about on a Word version or even a PDF. I mean, and this may sound like a simplistic answer, but I said this is honestly like more of a tech question than anything else. Again, you're searching your keywords, and then that's how I guess is the best place where you could start in terms of whatever specific um agenda item you're looking for within that master plan.
Yeah, what I'm saying is would it be all right to ask if, a limited amount of village resources could go towards creating a searchable version of the master plan document? That's all.
I honestly didn't feel that was necessary. I found what I was looking for very, very easily in the old master plans. And so far, by the way, I've not just done air, but I did stormwater and groundwater. I did a white paper on each of those as well. So I've done this 3 times now, and I've used the master plan. I guess I know it pretty well.
Give that woman a medal.
I shared with Nick the stormwater and groundwater ones that I did, but was able to find, they're pretty well organized by the same exact topics that we're focusing on. So there's a chapter, on air. There's a chapter in the master plan on these other issues. So it's pretty easy to find what I needed.
And Peter, I don't even to give you again, like I said, this is the tech question, so to give you an honest answer, I don't even know if that's possible.
Yeah.
To specifically make that something like that.
All right, well, you can get back to us on that.
Yeah.
Is it possible to run some of these concerns past Chris Bradbury? Because I think he has a
Yeah.
better handle than any of us on.
Yeah, and no, Chris knows more about the airport than any of us, particularly
I'm
among
not
all
concerned about him knowing about the airport as much as knowing about the process of getting it through the county.
I'm including all that process,
So
everything, all the
this-
personnel.
Michael and I were talking about the whole issues that we're talking about here today, the other day. And we would like to have another meeting of the executive committee to address it. And maybe because Martha's done so much work, we could include Martha, we'll get Martha included. And secondly, John has been, let me get his name right, Mastrichisio has been unable to attend a lot of the meetings. Would you be, he volunteered at some meeting. I'm not even sure you were there. Would you like to be on the executive committee as a representative? Anyway, give it some thought and get back to me. You could talk to John if you like, but he seems a little busy.
Yeah, happy. Let me reconnect with John, get his sense on where he's at with it, and I'd be happy to help out if I can.
And we were going to send out a note, Michael and I, because we had some of the same concerns, but maybe in a little different way. And hopefully meet maybe in 2 weeks. The executive committee gets together and we kind of sort this out. See, Michael and Peter are probably the people two most knowledgeable about airport things.
I mean, I'd rather, if we're gonna do that, do it before the tour. Do it sooner than later.
Before the tour. Okay. That'd be next week.
The tour is
31st.
in 9 days, yeah.
No, it's not the 31st.
Yes, yes, it
No,
is.
it's not. I corrected you
It's the
once already.
29th.
Wait, you keep,
Thursday, the
31st is a
29th.
Saturday.
yes, thank you. I don't know why I keep mixing that because I think it's another something else happening that day. I keep mixing it up. I'm sorry. Yes, 29th.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
could try to do that next Tuesday or something.
I'm game.
Because he and I, he has, as you know, Peter, he has some concerns that I think we need, which are similar to what some of you have expressed. So I think we ought to try to work them out. Because
Okay.
we don't want to be in a situation where we're asking the municipalities to do something they really can't do, which is process 6 resolutions, though. I tell you, in the Rye Brook case, it wasn't a big deal. They got through it pretty quickly. But let's just see what we want to do and what we want to. And I think his view was also that we can't be overly detailed in our requests or recommendations because we probably don't have sufficient, some cases we may, but in most of these cases, we're not going to have sufficient expert information to be all that specific. And you don't want to, take a misstep in that process.
Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, I'll put Martha up against anybody.
Yeah, no, I'm not
But
talking about Martha, but
but
as
it's
we
not
say,
up to, but
have
it
another
shouldn't be
topic.
up to Martha, to come up with all of this content. And at the end of the day, I think no matter how good our content, it's there's going to be. I think we've already seen that there's going to be sort of an instinctive pushback by the folks who consider themselves to be, you know, the experts. And at the end of the day, um, we're the voters. We're ultimately the people that the decision makers here want to be happy. So, I mean, obviously, we're not the only people, but we're a significant constituency for them. And so, uh, if we're coming up and we're basically saying, look, we need serious attention and resources paid to these issues. And here's some examples of why and how. And you know, we're not we're not dictating uh, all of this to you, but we've got and we'd like to but we do have some other ideas that we'd like to share with you, and that you could at least hear us out. From there we have a right to request and receive a better. I mean, part of this is that the process has become so muddy, right, and so opaque. It wasn't supposed to be that way. It
Uh,
started out with a public blueprint for what the timeline and the process and the public input pieces were going to be, and then frankly, COVID shot that all to hell, and politics came in with as well, both legal lawsuits and politics. And we have a right to say, look, if this is going to, if this is in fact going to kick up again, and you got to let us know if it is or it isn't, then we need to, we want to, we have a right to get back to the same level of clarity about process and timeline as we had before, and then we'll provide feedback accordingly. But to Martha's point, we should get out ahead to set the scope, to impact the scoping as soon as we can.
Yeah, no,
Okay, so John,
yeah.
can you get hold of Michael and see if he can do it next Tuesday, same time? And can everybody on this call do next Tuesday, same time?
Yeah, I'll contact him.
And Greg, if there's any way Chris can join us, that would be terrific.
I'll ask.
And Rich, if somebody from Greenwich can be on the call, it'd be great if you can't.
Okay, got it.
It works for me.
good.
You know, the one thing I do want to say in terms of the agenda, like even again, I can't speak for any other community, of course, other than Rybrook, the one that I'm a part of. But in terms of if it, again, and I don't, of course, want to be presumptuous, but if it did have to go through any of the committees, at least, and again, I can say it, for us, it's a very simple process. Again, well, to be fair, I mean, I'm the one who makes the agenda, so I really, and Chris, so we really the ones who determine honestly what goes on there. But anytime we have any of these resolutions, particularly if it's a long, complicated one, Chris and I'd like to explain it to the board first before they vote on it, and then give them background information, and then they can make their decision from there.
Yeah, every municipality, every community in this group of 7 is different.
Yeah, that's why I said I'm only speaking for for
So
Rybrook.
we need
But,
to
again, at least
we need to
for
keep
us,
it simple.
But
Yeah.
to sharing our own. Like I said, as I said, I'm only speaking for Rybrook, but at least for us, in terms of that's how the process works.
Yeah, I guess the word I was seeking, and I think what Martha did could lay the basis for this, is we have to make knowledgeable points. We can't just make generalities about this or that. We have to make some knowledgeable points, because otherwise we won't have credibility. And maybe on all these issues, we won't have enough knowledge to make a knowledgeable point. We'll have to fall back on something else, right?
Well, I think there's also nothing wrong, as long as it's clear we're making an effort to be thoughtful and mindful about this. There's nothing wrong with, having certain areas where, in the time frame provided, we haven't come up with, fantastically researched solutions. But that doesn't mean we don't have a right to care about something. And again, this is a political process as much as anything else. We got to keep that in mind.
Well, that's right, Peter, which is why you don't want to leave yourself open to someone simply saying, oh, yes, we share the same concerns. Let's move on. Because, that's what happens when you get these big open meetings, for example.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the big picture, less might be more if it's going to guarantee that all 7 communities are on board.
That's true.
Yes.
That's the other objective. That's the other
Our
side. of
strength
it.
is in
That's-
numbers.
Strength is in numbers.
All right.
Well, that's why I was quite pleased that all 7 communities approved the resolution, the TUA resolution. And each of them had maybe some little conversations, but in the end, they approved.
Right. While we were talking, I figured out how to convert my 8 points to one single point about air pollution. That's very, very, very specific. And I think has the technical gravitas that you are looking for, but reduces it down to a single point. And that is really that in the gist of it being that ultrafine particles in lead are now known contaminants of concern at airports nationwide, and these have not been addressed previously by the county in master planning documents or other environmental documents. Therefore, we recommend on and off-site monitoring, terminal improvements for HVAC, impose restrictions or incentives on fuel users, and space planning for the conversion to unleaded aircraft fuel, something like that.
Yeah.
One recommendation, very simple. It has some technical weight behind it. And we can add footnotes if we want to, but that's it. That covers really the whole document. And it took me a lot of research to come up with that, the content of that. And we have all the backup for it, but we can reduce it down to just a couple sentences.
Well, that sounded really good to me.
All right.
So something like that. I mean, we can do that on each topic, right? And
Right.
maybe it's one more that we add to that, but I think we can do this and get to the end result. And I agree, a document closer in length to what we did for the TUA proposal is, you know, what we should be after. 5 pages.
John, I apologize. As I mentioned to you, I got a hard stop. So I
Okay.
thank
Okay.
everybody.
Well, yeah, just,
Martha, again, I'm around. I'm around now for the next couple of weeks. So, and certainly the next couple of days. So happy to do help in whatever way you think I can.
So what interest does anyone have in reading up on stormwater and groundwater before our meeting with the airport? Do you want me to send you the other drafts of these? Should I wait until after the meeting?
Martha, why don't you and I get together and go through it? Since
Okay.
we're on the committee. And,
Okay.
yeah, and why don't you, if you could, Martha, Greg will send the invitation once I talk to Michael. And then if you would just send back the wording you just had, because I
Okay.
think that might be quite the way to go.
Okay. At least it's a, you know, straw man. We can all pull it apart and decide, no, it's not detailed enough. It needs to be, you know, changed, but it's something to think about whether that's the right level of specificity we want.
okay, good.
Okay.
Greg, you'll let us know about the 27th.
Yep. I'll speak to Chris. If I can't speak to him out tomorrow, definitely Thursday, but I'll
And
definitely.
John, you'll speak to Michael.
Yeah, I'll speak to Michael. Should we set the date for the next general meeting today?
I don't think that's going to be any honestly useful of your time, considering that there's like 5 of you here.
Yeah, I think so, right. But it'd be toward the end of September.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna have to communicate to people what comes out of this smaller meeting, which we'll try to have on Tuesday,
Right. And the tour.
and the tour.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
Mention that remember parking at 9:30. I mean, that still as of now. April hasn't told me anything again. If she reaches out to me out of the blue and tells me anything differently, but 9:30 parking, she would like to start at 9:45 promptly.
and we go up to the conference room where they have their board.
Yep, I'm on the second floor.
Yeah,
I'll be there to help guide everyone. I mean, once you find it, it's fine, but again, it's like a little door on the second floor that you have to go through.
okay.
Okay.
Great,
Well,
thank
Martha,
you.
thank you again. You are making the wheels turn.
No problem. I find this interesting, fascinating, frankly. It's a lot of very good, cutting edge research going on out there about aviation. Who knew? Right? This was such a hot topic in the scientific community these days. So good stuff.
Okay, good night.
Okay.
All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Hi,
night.
guys.